In the dense, rural jungles of Thailand, far from the golden spires of Bangkok or the white sand beaches of the tourist coasts, a Buddhist monk built a sprawling temple complex, not from marble or stone, but from over 1 million discarded beer bottles. It gleams like a jewel in the sun, green and brown glass catching the light like stained glass windows. But its beauty hides a strange contradiction. A house of purity made from the relics of intoxication. And at its center is the story of a monk who once sealed himself inside a cave, alone, to test whether solitude could lead to enlightenment or madness. His name was Prakru Wisit Sawakun, but he was not always a monk. He was born Luang Pu Bunliua Sulilat in the 1920s during a time of political upheaval in Laos. The son of a modest farming family, he grew up amid rice paddies and river mist, learning to chant Buddhist sutras before he could write his own name. From a young age, he was drawn to spiritual matters, curious not just about prayer, but about the machinery of the mind itself. He asked questions that made elders uncomfortable. Where does the self go after death? Why do monks need temples to find silence? He briefly left monastic life as a teenager, drifting between Laos and Thailand. In his 20s, he trained in sculpture and art, fascinated by how sacred ideas could be made physical. He saw statues not as objects of worship, but as bridges, tools that could point to something ineffable. But his turning point came in his 30s, after returning to Thailand, when he began to feel that even temples were too noisy. He had grown disillusioned by the vanity he perceived in religious institutions, gold-leaf Buddhas, fundraising campaigns, rituals that felt more like performance than practice. So he undertook a radical experiment. He found a small, natural cave near the Mekong River, remote, difficult to access, and utterly silent. With the help of 2 disciples, he carried in a small mat, a bowl, and enough dried food and water to survive. Then he instructed them to seal the entrance with bricks and mud. He would remain inside for 3 months, with no contact from the outside world. The goal was simple: eliminate all distractions, total sensory isolation, just breath, thought, and stone. He believed that only in absolute silence could the mind reveal its true shape. Inside the cave, time became fluid. He described the early days as euphoric. Hours of meditation passed like minutes. Colors behind his eyes seemed to dance. But eventually, the silence became dense, heavy. Thoughts repeated like chants with no end. Shadows felt alive. One night, he reported seeing a vision, a flickering structure made not of stone, but of glass. When his disciples finally broke open the mud bricks and let him out, he was gaunt and pale, but smiling. "The world," he said, "is loud with what we throw away." He returned to monastic life with a new clarity, not one that rejected society, but one that sought to transform it. If garbage could become sacred, then so could people. In the years that followed, he wandered Thailand's Isan region, eventually settling in a poor village near Khun Han, in Sisaket province, close to the Cambodian border. It was the late 1970s. There was no real infrastructure, just red dirt roads, overgrown weeds, and scattered houses made from tin and rotting wood. Many families lacked electricity or running water. He built a small hut from bamboo and thatch and began meditating there daily. His lifestyle was austere. He accepted alms from the villagers but asked for nothing more. He slept on the floor, spoke rarely. The locals came to call him Luang Por, or Venerable Father. But what made him different wasn't just his discipline, it was his eye for what others overlooked. The villagers drank bottled beer. So did passing travelers and soldiers stationed near the border, but there was no trash service. Discarded bottles littered the fields, the streams, the base of banyan trees. Children kicked them like soccer balls. adults ignored them entirely. The monk began to collect them. At first, he said nothing, just washed them in basins of river water, set them out in the sun, and stacked them by color. Green Heineken, brown Chang, clear soda bottles, and the occasional bright blue tonic bottle, which he treated like a jewel. To the villagers, it was strange, but harmless. To the monk, it was a form of meditation. It began as a wall, just one, a border between his hut and the jungle. Bottle by bottle, a structure emerged. What he saw in his cave years ago was starting to become real. The first wall was modest, just a border between the monk's thatched hut and the surrounding jungle. It was built from beer bottles, carefully cleaned and laid in rows, the glass catching the light like dew on bamboo. There was no blueprint, no formal design, just repetition, mindfulness, and patience. At first, the villagers were amused. They saw it as a harmless eccentricity, the monk who collected trash, the holy man who built with beer bottles. But day by day, the wall grew, then a second wall, then a corner, then a roof. Something was taking shape. The monk said little, he simply worked, washing, sorting, placing. When asked why, he said only, "The bottle is not the problem. Attachment is." Heineken bottles were most common. Green, thick, and consistent in size. Shang beer bottles were brown, slightly larger. Together they formed repeating geometric patterns. Bottle caps were saved too, flattened and turned into mosaics, lining posts and altar steps. Even labels, when they couldn't be removed, were lacquered into murals. Soon, villagers stopped laughing. They started bringing bottles themselves. Tourists, intrigued by the growing structure, donated crates. Some began calling it Wat Lan Quad, or Temple of a Million Bottles. Others called it Wat Maha Chedi Kaew, the forest temple of the Great Glass Pagoda. With help from other monks, the bottle temple expanded. They built a prayer hall first, then a crematorium, then restrooms, guest huts, a water tower. Every wall was glass, every surface shimmered. By the early 1980s, the main temple, the Chedi, began to rise. It was a stepped pyramid with a spire at the top, blending traditional Thai architecture with a strange, alien glint. In the midday sun, it looked less like a religious building and more like something unearthed from a dream. Inside, light filtered through green and brown glass in soft, uneven rays. At sunset, it felt as if the walls were breathing color. The layout itself was symbolic. The path through the temple mimicked the Eightfold Path. Bottles, symbols of indulgence, now lined the journey to discipline. Where others saw trash, the monk saw karma made visible. It was never about alcohol. The bottles had been emptied, washed, stripped of meaning. What remained was glass, pure, transparent, functional. What once caused suffering now served meditation. One monk said, "The world tries to throw things away. We show they can be used again." By the late 80s, Wat Maha Chedi Kaew was no longer a secret. Travel magazines featured it. Backpackers made detours. Even some local officials, once dismissive, praised its environmental message. But for the monk, attention didn't matter. He refused to sell trinkets or charge entrance fees. The only souvenir, he said, was the silence you carried home. Thought Fra Kru Wisit Sawakun, the monk who once lived in a cave and dreamed in glass, continued building until the end of his life. He never stopped collecting bottles, never sought fame. When he passed away in 2021 at the age of 85, his ashes were placed inside the very temple he built from waste, beneath a chedi made of green and brown glass. Today, Wat Maha Chedi Kaew still stands in the rural quiet of Sisaket province. The walls have weathered, the bottle edges dulled by rain and sun, but the temple remains intact, maintained by his students who carry on his work with quiet devotion. It's no longer a media sensation. Tourists come and go. Some leave with photos, a few stay to meditate. But for the monks, the message never changed. What others throw away still has value. In a world drowning in excess, the temple is a strange reminder that even broken things, emptied, discarded, can be made sacred again.